More people keep moving into Nevada and looking for jobs, and they might want to go to college here. One lawmaker says he wants to help more people get degrees, those in the U.S. in legal limbo under the DACA program.
I was born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and my family moved to Las Vegas when I was about 1. I had a whole team that eventually formed behind me to make sure that I could fight for my family's future and help my friends out too. If I wasn't valedictorian, I wouldn't have gone to college.
Sebastian, a 2017 valedictorian of Sunrise Mountain High School, says he defied the odds and got a full-ride scholarship to UNLV. Without it, he couldn't pay for school. Back then, though he had lived in the U.S. and Nevada practically his whole life, the dreamer had to pay the price of out-of-state tuition to go to UNLV.
Just tuition is like well over $20,000. I wanted to go talk to a counselor. When I was a high school freshman, I was like, okay, college, how do we do it? And she started looking at scholarships. All of them had a citizenship requirement.
In 2021, state law changed. Teens in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program who graduated from Nevada high school would only pay Nevada tuition. But now one state lawmaker wants to help other dreamers go to college.
You know, dreamers are in a place in stage in their lives when they're looking to retrain, when they want to go out and maybe go to college. And I can't go to school because I have to pay an out-of-state tuition.
Assemblyman Ruben De Silva says his bill would allow any DACA recipient to get Nevada tuition rates once they lived here for a year, just like any other U.S. student. He says it's crucial to help more locals get degrees and fill shortages for skilled workers, like teachers. Sebastian's about to get his teaching license and is a substitute for Assemblyman De Silva's Rancho High class while he's in session in Reno.
The commitment we've seen from immigrant teachers in our schools and the sort of a boost that they've been in regards to staffing in a crisis.
And as a DACA recipient, as a public servant, people deserve the opportunity to get their own American dream.
The Republican response tonight from the legislature. We'll have to see the specific language of this bill before we can assess how it changes current law. Of course, we're open to fruitful bipartisan discussion and deliberation. We can say with certainty the federal government's abject generational failure to resolve the DACA issue has created catastrophic challenges for state governments like our own, which constitutionally should not be responsible for immigration and border security issues.